So we have to get used to the idea that in addition to having people we work with, we will have agents we work with, and these agents work for us. And in the same way, we think about how do we get the best use out of the people, because people have unique talents. These agents will have unique talents as well. And so we have to think about how do we manage them, how do we incorporate them into our workflows, in the same way we think about how we work with our teams and our individuals here.
Welcome to On Top of PR with Jason Mudd.
Hello and welcome to On Top of PR. I'm your host, Jason Mudd with Axia Public Relations. In this episode, we're featuring Frank X. Shaw. He serves as Microsoft's Chief Communications Officer, where he leads global communication strategy, storytelling, product PR, media and analyst relations, executive and employee communications, global agency partnerships, and military affairs. He plays a key role in shaping how one of the world's most influential companies communicates with customers, employees, and stakeholders. And our topic is the future of AI. I want to say, Frank, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here. It's a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm very excited about this conversation. I've been looking forward to it. The future of AI and PR is a timely topic, one I know that our audience will be very interested in. We've covered AI in detail in other episodes, which we'll put a link to in the episode notes for our audience. But this is our first time talking with you, Frank, and you've actually developed a communicator's guide to AI tools and mindsets for modern PR and media, a course on LinkedIn Learning. How did that come together?
It was one of those things where we're in a fortunate position here at Microsoft because we have just a tiny little bit of a view into the future, just by the nature of the kind of work that we do. And so, from the first day we started getting ready to announce what became GPT-4 with OpenAI, we knew that it had real impact in the kinds of work that we would do as communicators. And we started a focused effort to think about how do we reinvent ourselves around this new technology. And we've been on a sprint ever since, because just as soon as we think we figured something out, new tools, new methodologies, new models come out, and then you sort of have to start that process over again.
Right.
So we we published some stuff before, internally and externally. And, we wanted to take advantage of LinkedIn Learning because there wasn't anything out there that was very specific to communicators. There was a lot of great content around AI and marketing and a lot of related fields. But, the question is, what communicators do? And one of the things that we really wanted to focus on wasn't just like, where are we now? But also this mindset that we have to get to, because, what is true today is not going to be true 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years from now, but sort of how we approach it has the potential to be more durable.
Okay, excellent. So what was your first kind of touch or interaction with AI? I mean, I don't know if it's considered AI, but, we talked before we pressed record about back in the day, Clippy, used to pop up on your screen and tell you it looks like you're typing a memo or a cover letter or a resume. I can help you with that. And it would therefore generate more of a template response.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. AI has been around for a long time, and people have been pursuing it in a variety of different ways for a long time. And, some of it was through machine learning and predictive analytics and a whole bunch of other things that had some of the same characteristics of what we're seeing now. So Clippy is a great example of that. Some of the text-to-speech translation is another example of that. Heck, even autocorrect in the different applications that we run has some of that feeling to it. I mean, it's early on. What we sort of think about is everyday AI. The big change has been the increasing power of the large language models, the frontier models in particular. And it was super clear when I sat in a room with a bunch of my peers here at Microsoft and we saw GPT-4 for the first time. Mm-hmm. And really became super clear that we were sitting on the cusp of a major shift in how people engaged with technology.
Right. So what are some of the best practices that you and your team use AI for internally?
Well, it changes on a regular basis, and I think the most important thing is for us as communicators is to think deeply about the highest value that we bring. Mm-hmm. What is it? What is the highest and best use of every hour of our time where we work as communicators? And then how do we get there faster? What are all the steps between something that I think about as super high value and what can I use AI for in each of these categories to get me or the team there faster? Mm-hmm. And so the first part is really sitting down and basically breaking it down into a chunk of atomic level steps or tasks that you take, and then looking at those and saying, hey, where can AI help? Where can I automate something using AI that I couldn't automate before?
Right.
And where is AI still not very useful, that I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that? And you test it. And then you rebuild your system around that. And then the key thing is you have to be willing to go back and test it again, because it's going to change, because something you said, oh, but this isn't very good use of AI right now, or I can't automate this. Now I can. So like just a real example for us that has been super useful has been, as a global company, our ability to rapidly translate documents into languages that are important has always been a constraint. It's hard to do.
Yes.
And it's a manual.
You're not just translating them, you really should be rewriting them in the native language.
Yes, exactly right. And so, but you have to do it fast. So either you finish all your stuff like 10 days in advance, a week in advance, and you give your teams around the world a chance to dive in and do this and make sure they get it right. Or with us, more often is that things come in hot, and so you finish them like the day before, and then they're not able to translate them in time. And so we now have the ability to have a high degree of confidence in our ability to take the documents and the materials and translate them to language in an automated way, and then have a review process, a human review process that makes sure that you've got it right, that is pretty efficient. So like that's a small example that is like wildly helpful for us. It's not as sexy. It's not as like, hey, let me show you a demo of this. There's no necessarily like there's an agent I created involved, but it's intensely useful process. Another example is, something that we do a lot of work with is we work with our analyst firms, with Gartner and Forrester and IDC. Right. And when they're getting ready to publish something, they come at us with just a mound of questions. And then we have to take those questions and we have to figure out what the answers are. And again, it's a pretty manual process, even though we have answers to those questions in a variety of different places. So the team was able to use some of our newer technology to create a way of answering those questions using existing materials and populating them into the answers. We save hours and hours and hours of time, and we'll get better and more consistent results as output.
Yeah, 100%. I love how you said the highest and best use. I use that term a lot. It's very common when we're thinking about real estate and how the highest and best use of real estate. But you're also reminding me of somebody you might have heard of before. His name's Bill Gates, and I think he's famous for saying, or at least I've heard that he said, do what you do best and outsource the rest, right? And so to that end, how can we focus on our highest and best use and then outsource or delegate, the use of, artificial intelligence to do some of the repetitive tasks or some of the tasks that, like you're describing, that have high value, but maybe it's not your highest and best use per se. And, I have to just joke that, or point out, you saying that, sometimes things are kind of being done at the last minute and not as intentional or timely as you'd like. And I think that, with all respect, you pointing that out, that, Microsoft, a large global enterprise that, in theory has all the resources, available to it. It's not lost on me what you're saying. I tell my clients and contacts all the time that even the biggest companies in the world will tell you they feel like they have a small budget and that they, are often working, all the way through to the finish line on deadlines. And so that's not something unique to small businesses, mid-market companies, agencies, nonprofits, whatever. We're all dealing with those things. It's just all relative and done in scale.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think budget is part of it. I just think when you're committed to a project, there is this natural desire to make sure that you've done everything right. And sometimes that means you're fiddling with documents at the last minute, which is, again, it's not ideal if then you're going to have to kick it over to, somebody in Japan, Korea, or Spain and say, I need this, to go out on your news sites in the next 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah, I was just working on a project this morning. I have a reminder on my phone that pops up and says, perfectionism slows you down. And this morning I was literally like overproducing something and just spending too much time on it. And the thing popped up on my phone and I was like, I'm so glad that came up right now because I needed a reminder. Yeah. And then Frank, the person that I sent it to, and I said, hey, I'm done with this, whatever. They came back and started perfectionisming me, what I said, or whatever. And I was like, nope, let's stop. Let's just go. Let's just go because perfect is the enemy of done.
Yeah. And this is part of the art. When you talk about the highest and best use of our time, especially as you become more senior, it is the ability to decide, hey, I've spent, 90% of the effort and I've got to 90%. I'm going to spend another 100% to get it to 95%.
Right. Yeah.
Is that the best use of time? Or am I, like you said, am I good enough? I mean, is it good? Have I gotten everything right? And it's not going to be perfect, but it'll be successful. Yes. And that's when we apply our intuition, our reasoning, our experience to the problem. And that's the sort of thing that, I don't know currently, at least, that there's a whole lot of help we're going to get anywhere other than in between our ears.
Yeah. Well, that's the old 80-20 rule, right? 80% of a project can sometimes take 20% of the time, and then the other 20% can take 80% of the time with the various approvals and inputs and everything else you've got to gain from it. So, and I think that's where, honestly, the bottleneck for me with using AI becomes, because you might get a good first draft that's 80% done like that, snap of the fingers from your AI tools, especially if you've trained them well, right? But then the human approval and the human process and the trust but verify kind of part is important. I'm also thinking about I can't remember his name right now, but the guy who says 80% done by someone else is 100% freaking awesome. And, that's one of my favorite lines. So I'll try to remember who that is during the recording here. But I think it's Dan Martell who wrote the book Buy Back Your Time, which is one of my favorites.
That's a good one.
All right, so let's talk more about the future of AI in PR, and kind of what are you seeing from your unique viewpoint, both as a communications leader, as the CCO, as well as working at a tech company that is obviously on the cutting edge of AI use and AI the future. Yeah,
I think. First of all, I'd say anything that I say from a predictive standpoint is likely to be wrong. I mean, just historically speaking, things are moving so fast.
And only moving faster.
That's right. And things that we thought were impossible 6 months ago are now probable. And so, I just always say that because, I don't think I'm necessarily going to be right. But there's a couple of trends I think that are really clear. The first is that we are going to have increasingly powerful agents that we can turn to complete more and more complicated tasks. Mm-hmm. So right now, most people continue to engage with AI essentially through a Q&A process or a refinement process. I have this document, simplify it for me, transform it into something else, translate it, make a PowerPoint, and these are great. These are useful tools. Now we're in the process where, we have access to and are using agents that are more autonomous. Send me, I want every morning, I want you to go out and I want you to look at the top news sites around the world. I'm especially interested in these 10 key influencers who are talking about whatever topic that I'm interested in. Send me a report at 8 o'clock every morning that includes citations, what they said, where they said it, and any implications for Microsoft.
Right.
And then you can see that. You can start to engage in predictive role playing with these agents based on what's happening. Hey, I see this happening. If this happens, what is the likely outcome? If our competitor says X, what do we expect the analyst firms to say? What do we expect how do we expect our investors to respond? What are the ways we can circumvent that? So you can use it in a very predictive role playing way that gives you a sense of what could happen, and it's not ever going to be perfect, but you now have a partner to really effectively work with you on things like that. So we have to get used to the idea that in addition to having people we work with, we will have agents we work with, and these agents work for us. And in the same way, we think about how do we get the best use out of the people, because people have unique talents. These agents will have unique talents as well. And so we have to think about how do we manage them, how do we incorporate them into our workflows, in the same way we think about how we work with our teams and our individuals here.
Yeah, you raise a good point for the communicators that are working at publicly traded companies and or those that listen in that are in investor relations. My friend has developed software where you actually can work on the messaging from your earnings calls with an AI platform that she's created that allows the AI to kind of use its predictive and analytics to tell you what's going to be trigger questions, what's going to be liked or not liked by analysts, and it looks at the data, the input of quarterly transcripts, right? And then it will use all this history that it has both on the company and other companies. And it'll actually help you improve your messaging, your scripting, and anticipate questions. And the next phase of it, which I'm not sure if it's live or yet, live or active yet, is the prediction on how the market will respond. Which I don't know how that's possible because I see you smiling also.
Predicting the market at this point is a fool's errand. So,
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
You have good results, your price goes down. You have bad results, your price goes up.
Yep.
You miss sales targets and you're a meme stock. At this point, just
100%.
Who knows?
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, the irony of, I've seen many of my clients get penalized, their market, their stock price get penalized because they won so much business from their competitors in a given quarter, right? That their numbers are way up. And so all their competitors' numbers are down. And so the market says, well, just because your numbers are up this quarter doesn't mean they're not going to be down next quarter, like everybody else. And they're like, no, we actually stole we won big accounts from, our biggest competitors. So we're up and they're down. And these are long-term contracts. So, the market is unpredictable, to your point. And we as communications people have a really big challenge in not only communicating that externally, but internally and managing market and other stakeholder expectations. And
we need all the help we can get. And so that's how I look at this, is that I now have help. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not like you can outsource your judgment, but you can augment it. And so a lot of these new technologies allow us to get information more rapidly, process information more rapidly, and then we have to make the time to sit and think about it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Really think and say, like, what is it that we want to do here?
Mm-hmm. And, people say to me and probably you all the time, man, the PR profession sure has changed, over the years. Corporate communications profession sure has changed over the years. And my argument is it really hasn't changed. We just have better tools. But those same tools require us to be even better practitioners, more strategically minded, because whether it was, email, the internet, text messaging, social media, and now AI, right? Those same tools used incorrectly or in the wrong hands or with someone who doesn't have, like you said, judgment or integrity or strategy or years of experience, right, can have, with great power comes great responsibility. And so, how many times has a text message gone out with the wrong message or to the wrong audience or an email blast and things like that? And as we start getting into agentic AI, there's going to be even more of that if we're not careful.
Yeah, I think that's right. I just think we're in a fascinating industry. And and this has been true for a long time. I mean, or I wouldn't still be in it. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is interesting is that we have seen an ongoing evolution of influence. Over the last 100 years, how do people get information? How do they make decisions? Who do they trust? Who publishes at scale? To what audience? It's just been this massive evolution and fragmentation of influence and authority, which has made our lives more complicated, but given us different opportunities as well. So you have that, and that's been ongoing. Even before AI, we had super interesting jobs because this was happening. Now we have more information, we have more insight, and there's different ways of sort of tackling this world.
Mm-hmm. This episode is brought to you by Audible. Enjoy 30 days free of Audible Premium Plus by going to ontopofpr.com/audible.
You're listening to On Top of PR with your host, Jason Mudd. Jason is a trusted advisor to some of America's most admired and fastest growing brands. He is the managing partner at Axia Public Relations, a PR agency that guides news, social, and web strategies for national companies. And now, back to the show.
Yeah. So, Frank, I think the question, oftentimes when I speak to audiences publicly about AI, especially among PR practitioners, is always the concern about our jobs and our employment future. And so, speaking of the future of AI, what would be your message to people who are worried about that? And two, what is the future of employment in the profession with AI? As we talked about earlier, it's growing and it's only going to grow faster. And we're only going to have to integrate it more and more.
Yeah, it's sort of the existential question of the day, not just for us, but for everybody. What skills are valuable? How do you bring people into the workforce, and what do you ask them to do?
That's right.
And I think again, there's just a lot of unknowns. As a society, we've gone through this before, right? We've seen significant shifts like this before, and historians have done a good job of trying to put that into perspective, whether it's the electrification that took place, whether it's the steam engine and the rise of the factories,
right.
Whether it's the internet itself, technology, internet, all these things radically reshaped the jobs that people do. Mm-hmm. It's not too long ago where you would actually have just pools of typists in any business. Yep. Their job was to type things up. And now we're just all typists, right? There are no pools of typists. We all type. I don't know about anybody else, but I spend a lot of my time fingers on the keyboard.
Yep.
And employment has grown through that. And people are probably having more fulfilling jobs than they did before. When if I just think about our industry, there was a time when, people came into the industry as earlier in career, and the work that they did is they created press kits and they stuffed press kits and they mailed them out and they did clipping books.
Yeah.
So as I think about jobs, then just in our industry and other industries, I'm relatively optimistic that there is more opportunity that is coming. Some of it is less visible currently than others, but I think it's there. And so then this gets back to where we started, which is this concept of what is the mindset that we have to bring to it. And the mindset has to be one of experimentation, curiosity, trying new things, being willing to fail at them. And then we're grabbing every tool that comes out there and thinking about how we can apply it to the work that we do. Mm-hmm. And the piece that I'm optimistic on is that if I look even here at Microsoft, in the time I've been in this job, the company has tripled in size.
Okay.
We have gazillions, which is an official number, more products and services than we did when I started. Mm-hmm. And essentially, we're doing all that with the same size team. Mm. And it's because we're more efficient. Yes. We've taken advantage of all the new technologies out there. We're more efficient. We're more effectively. We can pick and choose, what is important to us with a higher degree of fidelity. Mm. And so I don't look at all this technology as something that is going to cut costs. Mm-hmm. It's going to allow us to do the things that are in front of us that we want to do that we can't get to right now because we don't have the resources and the time.
So you're thinking about productivity efficiency versus financial efficiency.
Right. There's more. Yeah. So you can either look at this as an opportunity to cut something, or you can look at it as an opportunity to grow.
Right.
And we're all about growth, and there's more. There are more things that we want to do than we have time for right now.
Yep. You can only cut so much, right? But you can grow so much more. And, I was having a conversation with my daughter, it's easier to actually earn $1,000 sometimes than it is to save $1,000, or
right.
or to cut $1,000 from, your budget because, she's 20 something and her budget's already low and, she needed some money and she was trying to figure out what to cut. And I said, you'd be better off figuring out something you can sell or side hustle or ask for a raise to get $1,000, then you're going to be able to find $1,000 in cutting your budget,
Yeah,
unless you've got a fat budget, where you're already overspending, but she's already gone through those motions. So,
right.
Yeah. Well, speaking of kind of organizational efficiency, kind of talk us through in your role as the CCO. What is your organizational chart look like there within Microsoft?
Yeah, so we have a global organization. Broadly, we have teams that are product and engineering aligned. So we've got teams focused on gaming and on Windows and on productivity and on servers and developers and security. I think about these as the lines of business. We are supporting these lines of business. Then we have what I think about as the teams that help with content, right? So what is most important to the company? It's innovation and trust. So how do we drive those narratives forward? And those get then pushed into all the existing work that we do. We have a team focused on employee and executive communications because you have to do a great job of telling your story externally, but you also have to do a great job of talking to your employees about what you're doing. And then we have I use this term, it's not our official term, but I think about the platform. What is the platform that we stand on? What is the platform for modern communications? What is required? What is the talent that is required? What are the capabilities that are required? How do we tell our own stories? How do we understand influence? How do we do measurement? That's another team that we have.
Gotcha. So ballpark, about how many lines of business does Microsoft have? Not a gazillion, right?
Yeah. It's a lot. I would, broadly speaking, this is an oversimplification, but you say we have a gaming business. Mm-hmm. With Xbox and all the games that we make and create. We have a productivity business that includes Microsoft 365, security, et cetera, for enterprises, small and medium and businesses. Mm-hmm. We have Windows that gets sold both to businesses and to consumers. Then we have the consumer products like Copilot and Bing and Edge and all the things that sit on there as well. And then, we have like the work we do with developers and partners and AI.
And AI is going to touch all of that in some capacity if it's not already, and I imagine it's already touching all of it.
It is, but there are things that we do like in the developer land. We have Copilot, GitHub Copilot for developers and ordinary human beings to use. I use GitHub Copilot, and I'm not a developer, and you can build applications and services on it that are just for me in ways that I couldn't ever do before. And AI is in there. Can you give us
an example beyond the one you mentioned earlier of collecting, data and news content?
Well, I did. Yeah, I mean, these are silly examples. But sure. I have a kayak. I like to kayak. One of the questions you always have to ask is like, when is a good time to launch my kayak from this specific spot? Mm-hmm. There is no website that does that.
Yeah.
Right. But I built one. It's just for me. That says like, hey, when does the ferry come by? What do the currents look like here? What's the wind patterns? When is the sun's going to come up? When's the sun going to come down? And it'll say, hey, based on these things, this is a good time for you to launch your kayak. It's software for one person. Mm-hmm. And it's the kind of thing that wasn't ever possible before. But now it is.
Yeah. And you could use that. I mean, couldn't you offer that publicly to people? I mean, others would benefit from it.
I could. You could. But this is the interesting challenge. It's harder than you think.
Okay.
Because everybody has different expectations. I could create a version of, I could create a word processor. Somebody could create a word processor. Could probably be a pretty good word processor. And they could say, hey, Jason, I'm going to sell it to you, and I'm going to sell it to you for $20 a year. Screaming deal. You're going to be able to use this beautiful word processor. Well, who's going to support it? Who's going to update it? Who's going to translate it into different language? Who's going to make sure it stays secure? All of a sudden, that $20 does not look like it's going to carry this developer very far.
Yeah. I love what you mentioned support, because we've developed some SaaS solutions for our clientele also. But, in the business model, like you're pointing out, one support call ruins the margins on that customer or perhaps that business, because we want to price it low, we want to offer it and make it accessible. But the moment you've got to get a human involved to provide support to them, you can't charge $20-$50 a month anymore, or in your case per year or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's a perfect example, I think. Well, Frank, this was really helpful. What else would you want to share with our audience about the future of AI in the public relations profession?
Yeah, I think, look, I'm in technology. If you're in the technology sector, you have to be a little bit of optimistic about what it can do for you. When I first saw GPT-4, and I remember driving home after seeing the demo and wondering if I had made a poor career choice to be in comms. Because you think about the value that we provide. We synthesize a lot of information. We translate it into language that people can understand. We tell stories to make it approachable. And I had just seen a demo where this large language model did many of those things. And they did a bunch of other stuff too. And I had this moment of near existential dread of saying like, what am I going to be doing a year from now? Mm-hmm. So here we are. It's 3.5 years later. I'm busier than ever. And I have more tools. Right. The big mistake, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would have found a way for us not to talk about AI as a singular thing. Because a lot of times people hear AI and they think about this black box. Mm-hmm. And AI is going to do this. AI is going to do that. It's going to take my jobs. It's going to, destroy the universe. It's going to create, all these things. It's like this personification, this AI thing.
Right.
And the reality is it is a collection of tools. And they're some of the most malleable tools ever created, which means that everybody is going to be able to find a tool that works best, not just for the industry or the thing that they want to do, but for them personally in how they do it. And that's the really exciting part. You know, I might be excited. I'm more excited about Excel agent because I've never been very good at Excel.
Yeah.
Than I am about Word agent because I'm a pretty good writer.
Yeah.
But it's inverse if you're in accounting. Like you might have, and so everybody has this new set of capabilities. Everybody has this new set of tools. And if we approach them with that sense, new tools, as opposed to this black box of AI that is going to do something to us, I think we'll just generally be a lot better off.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay. I like it. And I think you're spot on. Anything else you wanted to mention while we're together today? Yeah,
no, I think the last thing I'll say is that I think everybody should be experimenting with stuff at home and at work because it's moving really fast, and the way you stay on top of it is just play.
Yeah, that's right. Play. I remember the very first time I ever got on the internet, 6 hours later, it felt like it'd been, an hour. And the same thing with, Chat GPT. So, it's kind of that same thing is that, if you're not fascinated and excited about the potential in the future and, a little scared, or mindful of what, the ramifications, then I think you're missing a unique opportunity to be here in this moment and really take it all in. So as we're wrapping up, I've got to ask you about your artwork there in the background.
Yeah. There's an artist that we've worked with before. The first one says, think like an engineer and write like a poet. Okay. And that was something I met with a bunch of engineers, and I was talking to them about the role they played. And that was what I said to them. You have to think like an engineer, but you have to write like a poet. Because like how do you make things accessible? And then the second one says every day is a moonshot. Okay. So that's how you have to approach it.
I like it. Okay. Frank, if someone's interested in the course that we mentioned earlier, Communicators Guide to AI Tools and Mindsets for Modern PR and Media course on LinkedIn Learning, do they just go to LinkedIn Learning and search that up?
That's right. It should pop up, and they can take a look.
Good. And if anybody has follow-up questions for you about this episode, I would point them to the episode notes, which will be on topofpr.com/Frank-Shaw. And then, but if they wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them, or who's the best contact there for them to get a chance to ask you any follow-up questions?
LinkedIn is a great place to reach me. I spend a fair amount of time on the platform, and so that's a great place to connect with me and ask questions, and we can keep the dialogue going there.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, Frank, I really appreciate you sharing your insights and experience here with our audience today. This has been a great episode, and we really appreciate your time. Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, with that, that's been another great episode of On Top of PR. Thank you for being here with us today. If you or a colleague would benefit from this episode, please take a minute to share it with them on your social media. And if you haven't yet, please take a moment to leave us a review on the platform of your choice. When you share about On Top of PR, we have an opportunity to attract and help more audiences, and with our ultimate goal of helping people stay on top of PR. With that, this is your host, Jason Mudd from Axia Public Relations, signing off, wishing you well.
This has been On Top of PR with Jason Mudd, presented by ReviewMaxer. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and check out past shows at ontopofpr.com.